Welcome to the Rotary Club of York. We are a people of action who serve to change lives and honor the four-way test. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Steve Feldman will lead us virtually in our opening song, the Star-Spangled Banner, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. David Lovelace will offer the invocation, and Fran Polk will introduce our visitors.
Rotarians, please join me. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In light of our program today, Nelson Rockefeller once was asked, "How much is enough?" And he paused and thought for a minute and said, "Just a little bit more." Let us pray. Gracious Lord of all, we have inherited this good land with honorable industry, sound learning, and a social conscience. Grant that we might be worthy custodians of this earth on which we dwell, and creative in the ways that we care for one another. Comfort with a sense of goodness all who suffer from the viruses that have impacted our world, and give us patience to work together to defeat the troubles that beset us. Bless our speaker this afternoon and all who provide us with knowledge so that we might be generous, knowing that all any of us want is to be able to provide for what we really need. Pour out your blessing on this and every Rotary Club as we express our commitment to service above self. We give thanks for the food that was set before us on this day, for those who prepared it for our enjoyment, for health, and for good friends. And for all the good gifts by which our lives are enriched, we give thanks. Amen.
I am pleased to have the honor of introducing our guests for today's meeting. When I call your name, please stand and remain standing, that's the hard part, until President Jackie has welcomed you. We have guests, Tiffany Gladfelder, guest of past President Rob Bowen, Steve Harlacher, guest of past President Jim May, Michael Hahn, guest of BJ Fegley, Melissa Heiler, guest of past President Ann Druck, John Langle, guest of Austin Schenck, Adam Marsh, guest of PEN, Aaron Jacobs, Bruce Newell, guest of PEN, Aaron Jacobs, Cora Tyler, guest of Andy Rawitz, Naomi Morales, guest of Chris Topp, Bruce Bartz, guest of Eric Menzer, and Jeremy Kerstetter, guest of Brian Tate.
Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you here for this incredible program that you're about to enjoy. I hope that you find it very interesting, informative, and that you'll plan to join us often. Rotarians, please help me welcome our visitors. Thank you. Seated. Thank you. I'd like to extend a very special welcome to my colleague and friend, Mary Jane McCluskey. I'm going to ask you to stand. Mary Jane is the president of the Uptown Rotary Club, and she wishes to extend her deepest gratitude on behalf of her club for our being the sponsoring club and instrumental in the Uptown Club's formation 10 years ago. The Uptown Rotary Club's 10th anniversary celebration is taking place on Sunday, February 20th at Hermes Indian Fusion Restaurant on 24 South George Street. It'll be from 4:30 to 7, and she'd like to invite all of us to attend if we're interested. We just need to go to their website, or to their Facebook page rather, to the Eventbrite link, and the event proceeds will benefit their community grants program. The $75 ticket cost includes complimentary beer and wine, a 3-course dinner, live sitar music, dancers, and an evening of fun fellowship with a light celebratory program. Congratulations, MJ, to you and your club for this important milestone. The past presidents will meet today at 1:30 in the Elmer Smith Room. The Rotary Club of York Board will meet tomorrow, February 10th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. The Literacy Committee will meet on February 14th at 3 p.m. via Zoom. The Communications Committee will meet on February 15th at 2:30 via Zoom. As a reminder, Courageous Conversations 2, Creating a Welcoming Culture, will be held on Tuesday, March 1st at 9 a.m. and Thursday, March 3rd at 4 p.m. This conversation will focus on strategies we can take to make our club more welcoming and inclusive. To sign up, click on the Sign Up Genius link provided in the announcer, or you can contact Chris Toff. And now for our member moment. Jerry Watson joined Rotary in 1998 and has been a member of the Youth Exchange Committee for nearly 24 years, serving as a counselor to inbound and outbound students, as well as often serving as the committee chair. He's found the experience to be rewarding, interacting with young people from around the world and watching them connect with the culture they are immersed in. Jerry was the counselor for a student who traveled to Turkey when the Gulf War broke out. And while there were some very tense moments, the student convinced his parents to let him stay in Istanbul for the duration of his program. The student returned safely to America, grateful for this life-changing experience. Jerry earned his civil engineering degree from Lehigh University and has an MBA from York College. He founded his company Keystruck in 1995. They do industrial and commercial construction. He grew up in the business. His father was a carpenter, his uncle a plumber, and all of his dad's friends were in construction. As children, Jerry and his sister spent a lot of time at job sites. He knew as a boy what he wanted to do with his life. He's an avid golfer and a skier. He started skiing in college with his fraternity brothers who went to Vermont every year to ski. He's skied on some of the best slopes in the world. Jerry is a Delta Phi, as is Rotarian Chuck Long, who is also a Lehigh alum. And while they're fraternity brothers, Jerry likes to point out to Chuck that he was only 2 when Chuck graduated from college. Jerry and some high school friends were at the World Cup in Kitzbühel, Austria in 1980, right after the Winter Olympic Games when the US hockey team beat the Russians. After skiing one day, they went to a bar called the Londoner, where people from Austria, Germany, South Africa, Switzerland, and all over the world started buying them drinks. They had such a good time and thought, man, the people here are really friendly. So they decided to return a few days later. Well, when they walked in, everybody started cheering and someone shouted, "Hey, those are the guys from the US Olympic hockey team." And they didn't correct them. So it was a good time. Jerry and his wife, Donna, have been married for 39 years. They have 2 married children and a 6-month-old grandson. Jerry, thank you for the commitment you've made for over 2 decades to the Youth Exchange program and for being a positive role model to students in our community and around the world. Thank you. And now Eric Menser has a special Service Above Self Award to present.
Trent Bartz was one hell of an American. That's how the description of Trent on the Bart's Brigade website begins. Trent Bartz was born and raised in York County. According to his father, Bruce, Trent was charismatic and passionate in everything he did. He was a friend to everyone, and although not naturally athletic, loved to play sports, and he was always a team player, always encouraging others. He was 6 years old on September 11th, 2001, a day that ultimately inspired his future path. As he moved to middle school, Bruce started to become aware that all was not well with Trent. He started to have behavior issues, and ultimately Bruce had to move Trent to an alternative school. But in high school, things seemed to take a turn for the better. In fact, Trent was the president of his 9th grade class and sung in the York County Honors Choir and played football and basketball. As high school progressed, Trent visited with an Army recruiter and decided that he wanted to pursue a career in the military. He dedicated himself to fitness and became a stellar CrossFit athlete. Unfortunately, says Bruce, this is when mental health issues again began to reemerge. But Bruce says Trent was also able to hide them, enough so that upon graduation, he joined the Army and was assigned to the 203rd Military Intelligence Battalion in Aberdeen, Maryland. He also enrolled in Shippensburg University as an ROTC student. Unfortunately, things didn't go well. Trent continued to struggle with mental health challenges and turned to alcohol. He was eventually asked to leave Shippensburg due to poor grades, and he decided to pursue active duty service and deployment in the Army. Unfortunately, in the summer of 2015, Trent continued to struggle with alcoholism, and ultimately, after confrontation and argument, he took his own life. Bruce found his son Trent in the laundry room. He used a gun that he knew was in the house. After Trent's suicide, Bruce resolved to not let his death be in vain. According to Bruce, he found out only after the fact the depth of Trent's pain and struggle through notes and text messages left behind. Bruce says his motivation to start the Trent Bartz Foundation for Suicide Prevention, known as the Bartz Brigade, was asking himself what Trent would do. According to Bruce, Trent fought for the little guy because he was always the little guy. Bruce wants Trent's legacy to be just like him, to fight for the little guy and to let people know that it's okay to not be okay. The Trent Bartz Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Bartz Brigade, is a 501c3 based in York County that works to break the stigma of mental health struggle. Bruce created the foundation to support education, prevention, and awareness of suicide in York County, with a particular focus on military veterans. Through events such as the Ruck for Suicide Prevention, art fundraisers, butterfly releases, car shows, and more, the Bartz Brigade has raised tens of thousands of dollars to fund suicide prevention work and awareness in York County. Bruce's personal bravery and honesty in being willing to share his story as a parent is inspiring to everyone who meets him. I've seen it myself. I've seen the power of what he's been able to do with groups of volunteers who want to say yes to Bruce when asked to help. And in fact, Bruce's passion for this work has recently led to a new position within York County, working for York County's mental health department as a community liaison focused on suicide prevention. Bruce's decision to turn personal tragedy into community service is the epitome of service above self, and I'm really proud to be the one to present him with this award. Bruce Bartz.
I gotta let you know I come with a warning label. You're gonna have tears in your eyes and a lump in your throat till I'm done. So I am just more than honored. I don't even have the words. I know when Eric sent me the email that we received this award, I was like, I have no idea what to say. And I even told him in an email, I have no idea what to say. I sent it back to him. It's like, you got to give me the weekend to put this stuff into words. And So I gave him some stuff and I then prepared, I guess, the acceptance speech and he covered a lot of that. So I'm going to kind of blaze some of it, but one thing I have learned is when you talk in the public, especially when you talk about my my kind of situation, one thing you want to do is you want to tell a joke. And it's okay. You know, as a surviving parent, we can tell jokes because we're allowed to, because we can kind of do what we want to do. And so here it is Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, and Aaron Rodgers walked into a bar to see the Bengals playing a Super Bowl. So I have to make light on it because, like I said, I come with a warning label. I'm going to read this because I struggle, but I think I can kind of skip ahead. So when I got Eric's email, I was panicked. But on to Trent. After being bullied for several years, Trent decided he was going to stick up for the little guy. He was a huge heart, and all he wanted to do was help others. He decided at the early age that he wanted to take on the terrorist that affected his country. That was when he was in first grade. That's what motivated him to join the Army. When Trent was was a junior in high school, I remember getting a call from the high school. I had to go up and Trent was getting suspended. I'm like, okay, what happened? He said, well, Dad, someone was picking on one of my friends and I went after him. I'm like, okay, I'm all right with that. It is what it is. When Trent graduated from boot camp, he told me a story of how he helped another soldier, one of his battle buddies, who was having a struggling time being away from home. Trent used to sit up with him at night because the soldier couldn't sleep, and he got him through boot camp. That was what Trent did. Want to skip ahead to things about mental health and depression, and anxiety, and stigma attached is the issues. A lot of people think because someone has those issues, they're weak. People take their own lives not because they're weak. Trent was not weak. Trent had a weak moment, and that does not describe who he was and or define his life. A couple years ago, I met a man named Kevin Himes. Kevin was one of the 16 people that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. Kevin told me, as I was walking up to that bridge that day, if one person would have said, hey, how are you doing? If one person would have just stopped and smiled at me, he said, I would have never jumped. He also told me the millisecond his hands left that rail, he regretted what he did. On August 19th, 2015 at 3:42 in the afternoon, I was doing CPR on my son. I could see the regret in his face. After a few days after Trent's death, I received a call from York County Coroner. She told me there was tons of people that were calling to find out what had happened to Trent. And she said, what do you want me to do? I said, we need to scream out loud that Trent had mental health issues and that he was not a weak person, and that we need to start a conversation about suicide and mental health. We need to talk to politicians and the people that we can get money from to make more money go into mental health. I couldn't let Trent's death be in vain. So when Eric's question was, what motivated me? Here's what motivated me. The fact that 22 veterans a day complete suicide. That the fact that the 8-year-old boy who struggles so much, is hurting so bad, has no place to turn or no resources, that he will take his own life. The look on Trent's face of regret. That's what motivates me. I never want another parent to feel how I do. Little things about Bart's Brigade. Like Eric said, we were 501c3. Last year, we allocated $26,000 back into the community to help veterans, school-age children, and young adults with their struggles with mental health. Part of that $26,000 was $15,000 to high school seniors in York County. Everything we raise stays here in York County. I'm always looking for volunteers, and I hope I can get every email address in here, because we're always looking to shout out, it's okay not to be okay. I am so honored to have this award, and thank you very much.
It's just not fair. Bruce, thank you for taking a horrific tragedy and turning it into something that could really benefit countless other people. Thank you for what you're doing with the Bart's Brigade. I think it's just heartwarming, important, and we would love to give you all the support that we can. Good luck to you as you continue this incredible journey. You'll see on your table all of these little forms where we encourage you to think of nominees for the Service Above Self Award. We give the award out 4 times a year, and individuals like this are a perfect example of who's deserving of this honor. So take a good look at it. Consider people that we might want to honor in the future. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Eric. And at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce past President Mike Summers, who will introduce our program.
President Jackie looking sparkly today. That's good. Bless you, Bruce, for that and for your loss. We can all almost remember the US economy pre-worldwide pandemic in 2019. The unemployment rate was super low. The economy was chugging along. We can also recall those first pictures from China and the empty streets during their lockdown, and of course, COVID crashing through the rest of the world and our own medical crisis and shutdowns. Trillions of dollars later, the US economy has recovered at an amazing pace. And while COVID is still with us in some form and causing residual issues, we are now on the doorsteps of the Federal Reserve starting to become less accommodating, in all likelihood start raising interest rates, most likely in March. Without doubt, we have some crosswinds of a fast expanding economy, inflation and supply chain concerns, again, very low unemployment and rising rates. And perhaps last week best illustrated this choppy time with Facebook, now known as Meta, losing $250 billion of market value in a single day, and Amazon adding 191 billion of market value the very next day. We have invited one of our very favorite financial experts back to present to our club to help us go through some of this. Senior equity strategist Linda Duessel, to talk about the current economic and financial outlook. Linda is part of a team responsible for formulating Federated Hermes' view about various equity market conditions and the firm's positioning strategies. And with her 35 years of investment experience, Linda is also responsible for articulating the strategy, process, positioning, and performance of Federated Hermes' equity portfolio. Linda has been a regular commentator and contributor to CNBC's Closing Bell and other financial programs, including my very favorite way to start each morning by watching Bloomberg television. Linda has also been extensively quoted by Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal, and Barron's, and has been featured in the annual roundtable for USA Today and Smart Money magazine. Linda earned her master's degree from Carnegie Mellon University and a bachelor's degree from Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Linda has many designations, including her CFA, her CPA, and as a fellow CFP professional. Fellow Rotarians and guests, please warmly welcome Linda Duessel.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for your kind introduction, Mike, for inviting me back, and Jackie for allowing me to talk to the group today. Very difficult to come after your story, Bruce. I'm honored to be able to come after your story and to be able to meet you this way. I'm a mother of four, and we all worry about our children all the time, and to have to go through that and what you're doing. God bless you and your family. In the time that I have with you today, I wish to share my company's view on the economy and the markets. I have my presentation here. It's longer than time will permit. And I know Jackie's got the hook, so I'm going to behave myself as best I can and share with you, but basically share with you all of our views in the time that I have allotted. And as the title of my presentation suggests, it all depends on your timing. And one of the gentlemen said hello to me walking by here, said, good luck to you with this year. This year, 2022, has started off pretty volatile. And actually, as we at Federated Hermes did our outlook into this year, we suggested, as many others did, that this is likely to be a more volatile year. Definitely has started out that way. January was extremely volatile, so volatile that the odds are short-term traders should be happy in the next couple of weeks, though we don't root for anybody to be a short-term trader. But I also write a weekly piece for my website where I try to put things into context and with what's going on in the market. The valuation of the stock market is based on the market's view as to what the earnings outlook will be for that next year. So the value in the market at any particular moment of time is not a reflection of what we know today, but of what we think is going to happen in the next 12 months. And it's been a great bull market, as we all know. There's been a lot of money sloshing about out there. Money that gets sloshed about always finds its way to financial markets, and indeed it did. We had a 4,800 expectation for the stock market to finish the S&P last year, and we were pretty much right on target for that. This volatility has got a lot of people worried into this year. They're worried mainly because they haven't seen volatility for quite some time. Last year, we were lucky to have 5% pullback. The market's not supposed to go up in a straight line. On average year has 10% pullbacks, and that's a healthy thing. An average year pulling back 10%. We've already gotten one done this year. Today, the market's up. It's always good to talk to a group when the market's up. We're at 45.71 today. But if our forecast for this year of 5,300 works out as last year's did, we will enjoy a 10% return this year. No, it's not the 27% of last year, but that's very unusual. 10% return this year would be a fine year. And as we expect continued volatility, and I may make mention as I make my way through some of my charts here, as we expect continuing volatility throughout this year, I wish that we could all remember what is the golden rule for investing, which is that as long as I don't see a recession around the corner, I can be bullish on stocks. And we do not see a recession around the corner. Indeed, as Mike has said, the Federal Reserve is starting their tightening campaign. You love easy money. The market loves easy money. And our central bank, which has held 0% interest rates for an extremely long time, is now going to commence and raise interest rates. And it is a good thing. That is an old adage. We've got a lot of them in our business. It's not the first Fed hike that causes trouble. It's the last one. It's the one that dips you over and into recession. So should we worry about that when we realize that the market is forecasting the next, say, 8 to 12 months out? We still do not see a recession on the horizon. Jackie, as I breeze through I promise I'll breeze, as I breeze through my slides, and I will show you the strength that is still out there, so that if we can have a strong tummy in volatile periods, we can get things on sale. And if we're right, and the stock market returns 10% based on 10% earnings growth, both historically very, very good, then it's too early to worry. What could cause us to be wrong about this? It's inflation. And no matter if you ever catch me on TV, I think I'm going to be on Bloomberg in just a few days, actually. But if you catch me on TV or any of the people on TV, we try to tell you what we think will happen, but inflation has all to do with it. Inflation's been tremendous, as you know. There are 2 whole generations in our country. the millennials and then the Gen Zs behind them, and they've never seen anything like this. We've been in Goldilocks, 2% inflation for 40 years. Is it going to come down? Probably. Will it be higher than it had been historically? Probably. Will it come down enough so that our central bank doesn't raise too much and then cut us off? Nobody knows the answer to this question, so we'll stay tuned. But one last final comment about the market this year, as I make my way into what our economy is enjoying and what our long-term outlook is that this year is a midterm election year. Now, you can't necessarily guarantee this, but historical midterm election years are volatile. That's a normal thing. In fact, in average midterm election years, you make all your money after the midterm election occurs, regardless of what the outcome was. So don't know if that'll happen, something to bear in mind, but let's dive in. You probably can't read any of the words on this, and I apologize for that. I borrow all of my charts. But this is a chart that looks at the strength of economies around the world. We get it every month, month after month. And what you would love to see is the vast majority of those countries in the upper right quadrant. That is in expansion mode, up above the intermediate line of demarcation, not in recession. Hardly any country is in a recession in this world. That's good. You'd love to see the economy growing this month better than it was last month. We've been kind of sloshing around in the middle with the variant, actually, with this Omicron variant has slowed some things down. And one kind of bullish comment I'd like to make for you, this is good, it's not awesome, it's pretty good though, is that one of the last Gallup surveys I saw asked people about their views towards COVID today. 25% of the population, the adult population that was quizzed, said that they are concerned about COVID coming into this year. That argues to me that that 25% may not be out and about in a room like this, not wearing their masks. They may still be very, very conservative. And that can be a pent up demand as more and more time passes. We get more used to living with this situation. Knock on wood, we don't see yet another variant come down the pike. That could be good news. Here's what's great right now. We had, if you can recall, back in 2007, the housing bubble burst. We had a terrible stock market collapse at that time. And at that time, we started what was a very modest economic recovery by historical standards. I generally would travel every week on behalf of my company. And, we're bullish. Mostly you should be bullish. 70% of the time, the stock market is in a bull situation. And I would talk to a lot of people since 2008, really, and say, we're bullish on the economy, we're bullish on the market. And many people would say, I don't trust it, I don't believe it. And they were hoarding cash because they were so shell-shocked with that terrible pullback, that terrible bear market back in 2007. And so what did they do? Companies hoarded cash. Today, there's record cash on corporate balance sheets. That's a strong corporate America that can withstand a slowing economy. That's a bullish thing. And earnings have been vastly exceeded. Very difficult for Wall Street analysts who are paid to figure out what is the next quarter, the next year earnings outlook for the companies under their purview. Very difficult to do when you rock the boat the way we did with COVID. With COVID, we shut down our economy and earnings fell down dramatically, obviously. Very, very difficult, so that for 7 and now 8 straight quarters in a row, they've been too shy on their earnings estimates. Earnings in corporate America are at an all-time record high. When people say to me, why should I be bullish on the stock market in America? I say, because the stock market's level is based on the earnings of corporate America. And indeed, corporate America is superbly profitable. That's what this chart looks at. It looks at the free cash flow margins going back to the early 1950s in that mountain chart at all-time record highs. And if I had to point to the main reason why that is the case, it has everything to do with advancements in technology. Technology advancements, which were only accelerated in the time of COVID. allowing us to have our virtual meeting last year. I missed the salmon last year. It was so good. Oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be a sandwich, you guys, here in this beautiful country club. But gosh, how much we were able to do. We at my company, Federated Hermes, hardly missed a beat in terms of our ability to have meetings, Zoom meetings, all manner of meetings that way. And the technological advancements have fed through all the sectors of the stock market. So that's a good thing. And that's a good thing to remember as we suffer through our volatile year. Now, I know I show a lot of lines. To me, they're just fascinating. You're like, oh my God, another chart with lines on it. But here's what I want to say to you about corporate America. We bid up stocks based on the earnings of the companies within the S&P 500. What did they do when COVID happened? They had to shut down. Sales plummeted, obviously. Many expenses still stayed up there, but they had to slash expenses. And they slashed expenses dramatically. When the economy opened again, revenues went up again, and these companies were loath to increase their expenses. They were able to figure out how to keep costs well under control. Again, with a lot of technological advancements. What does that mean? That means profit margins grow. And now we have an inflationary problem, and companies are reporting all across the industries of the United States. Yes, we're having an inflationary problem. Yes, we're pushing it through to the consumer, and yes, they're paying, which means that when inflation rolls off at the back end of this year, which it necessarily will do, they're going to see if they can keep those prices up there, and the margins will grow even better. I am just a positive person by nature. I seek out the positive people. Let's hang together. Life is short and stuff like that. Oh my God, we've heard all about these supply chain constraints. Has anyone in this audience seen the picture of all those containers backed up in the port of Los Angeles? God knows I have no time to tell you this, but I'm going to anyway, because I have the microphone, and Italians love a microphone, especially with the step up. Me and the mister, we were hanging around the house. We were hanging around the house for 2 years and looking around the family room. This furniture's beat. We should get new furniture, which we did do. Sectionals, they're gorgeous. And so I'm just flipping around, looking around. Well, you have to, everybody knows accessories it makes the outfit, it makes the house. I said, I'm going to have the decorative pillows. You got the bigger one, smaller, then you got the marquee one in the middle. They all came, but the marquee one in the middle. I ordered it over a year ago. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary of getting the emails every month and a half. We know how disappointing it is. And we're going to push off your delivery time for this fabulous, I'm just telling you, it's fabulous. If you want to see the picture after, I'm going to run out of time. It is a fabulous pillow. And the big button at the bottom of the email, cancel your order. Oh, they would love for me to cancel that order, wouldn't they? And I will not cancel that order, because there's nothing quite like this pillow. And I know I'm going to get it, because I know that all those container ships will empty, and it's in there somewhere. As long as they put that little packet in and the rats and the mice don't get at my pillow, fingers crossed, all should be well. And what does that mean? All those products, which will find their way to our various stores and such, will fill our shelves. And I am expecting big sales by the end of this year. So fingers crossed. Maybe we can see some good things. And oh my gosh, wouldn't that be awesome? Because look at the free cash flow, where today, over and above the savings that we would normally have, probably that 2 trillion number is probably around 1.5 trillion, still a lot of money still in people's bank accounts, savings over and above what they normally would have, looking for, what am I going to buy? That is such great news for a consumer-led economy, and argues for sales to continue as we open up more and more, as we get more and more comfortable out there, moving towards more services that have been suffering. And we're seeing that too. And household balance sheets. This is great news, because when you see the debt, when you see that big mountain of red there, that was the debt that we were increasing as Americans as the housing bubble got bigger and bigger and people were borrowing beyond their means. When that bubble burst, everybody got shy, which is to say our debt levels versus our cash and our ability to pay our debts as Americans are nice and low, that's a good thing. Meanwhile, housing demand has been pent up. What you have today, I really have to behave myself. I'm watching the time. What you have today in a demographic situation is I'm a baby boomer. The baby boomers were the largest generation ever in our country until the millennials came along. And the millennials and the Gen Zs behind them are far larger than our generation. The millennial generation, the median millennial today is age 31. That is a prime age for looking to buy a house. There's a big pent up demand for it, but on the far right, you can see, but the housing inventory collapsed. When the housing bubble burst, they stopped building houses. This was necessarily going to be a problem one day, and it now is a problem. But even as house prices have gone up and up and up, mortgage rates are still reasonable. That's what it shows you. Historically, these lines would dovetail. The lines are people that are ordering a home versus houses that are being built. The houses in the backlog on the far right are much higher than what are being built now. These are people on a list for their houses to be built. It's the biggest thing that most Americans can buy is a house. That is such a wonderful tailwind for continued growth in our economy and continued growth in profits. And what's also great is look at how strict mortgage lending standards have been. Look at how low they were in 2005, 6, and 7. No wonder the housing bubble burst. People were buying homes that didn't have jobs. They were making up, that they even had a job. They had no earnings at all. Now, those who are borrowing money have strong credit situations, which argue that another housing bubble is unlikely, and that's good. But here's the thing, inflation is one of the most common concerns, words that has been Googled by people in these past months. Inflation worries, never had to worry about it before. And it's a legitimate concern, obviously. And as I suggested in my opening remarks, no one knows for sure how this will end up. It will fall off because much of it was in goods. And now the demand for, for an automobile, you probably already bought it if you needed to. The demand for the big ticket items, probably already bought it if you needed to. But today, the searches for stagflation are searching. And I, as someone who lived through the stagflation years, I call that hogwash. Stagflation is when you have inflation into a weakening economy. Our economy is booming. It is absolutely booming. And if anyone wanted a job today or to switch jobs today, you will probably never find as welcoming a job market as you see right now, where we go back to the early 1950s and look at the number of unemployed people per job opening. There are more job openings than people to fill them. And that is great. What that means is, as we all know, lots and lots of industries, they are short on labor. Might have something to do with my inability to get my pillow. The last number I saw was there were 80,000 fewer truckers out there than what is needed. 80,000 fewer. And that's all, and that's a hard thing. And just as an aside, no time to mention this, they got a little problem with truckers in Canada, as you know. If you want to concern yourself about the next possible chance for volatility, see if it comes over here in the States. That's causing merry havoc up there. We need our truckers, but the job openings are good. And what that means is you could probably get a wage hike too. You'll never have lasting inflation unless you can get the wage hikes with that. But where are all the workers? Our economy is back to where it was pre-pandemic and better in many cases. We're about 4.5 million people shy in workers than where we were in 19. Where'd they all go? And this is what it looks at. It looks at the expected likelihood of working beyond age 62 or 67. Basically, when COVID hit, we lost about 10% of those people over 60 who said, I want to work. A lot of people over 60, indeed over 70. That's what this chart shows. The biggest area, 1.5 million of that 4.5, people over 70. They were working at the end of 19. They didn't have plans to retire. They got shut out at home. Their portfolio started to look good. And they said, you know what? I'm done. I'm done. And if you added the people for 65 and older, that's 2 million of the people. And they are retired. And good for them, they can afford it. But the problem is many of these people were very good at their jobs. And can that next younger generation fill the skill needs that are required? Here, I'd like you to look at the left-hand part of this chart. And I don't know why these are running together. I apologize. Probably the PDF problem. But anyway, lower paid workers on the left side. Look at March 2020 on the far left bar, if you wish. The black part of that bar are people, households in the income of 60,000 or less that are unemployed. And then below that in the gray shade, out of the labor force, and how the unemployed number grew into July. But as we fast forwarded to the end of last year, look at all of the people that are still out of the labor force, or they're not being counted. Well, what happens when you don't have as many people and you have all this money sloshing about and all this demand? What happens? You need to pay up for your help. And what this chart here shows you is that the biggest wage hikes are in the lowest income cohort. That's a lot of inflation for particularly the service industries. For the United States as a whole, because they were in the lower income cohort, it doesn't move the needle as much as if the biggest inflation in wages was in the upper income, because their absolute earnings are low. Lots of people in the lower income cohort, they had to have 2 jobs just to make ends meet. But if you got a 7 or 10% wage hike, maybe you could skip that second job. And we've seen a lot of that too. So here we are, we've got a booming economy, which is what we know here, but consumer confidence is plummeting. Consumer concerns about inflation is rising. And of course, the average person, particularly those in the middle income and lower income cohort, however big was their wage hike, the cost of living is higher than that. So they're in a really bad mood, which brings us to the question of the central bank. Our central bank, and not just ours, but those all around the world, have decided to just print and print and print and print money in the name of COVID, which looked like a very good idea in March of 2020, so that we didn't have to go into a 10-year depression, which is what we did back in the 20s when our leaders made all the wrong mistakes. But today, our leaders, not just in the US, but around the developed world, have been reluctant to raise rates, to take away the punch bowl, which has never been, you have never seen money printing like this. So the expectations for inflation on the far right are through the roof. And our central bank is trying now, talking, the more they talk, the more we can clear up any uncertainty, which the market hates. If the market says, look, the Fed says, look, we're going to raise rates gently and slowly. That's fine. You can go from 0 to 1% on federal funds without hurting this booming economy. You can do that. But I want to emphasize this chart, which shows what the stock market is up against. For if I look on the left hand, there's 2 ways the stock market advances. 1 is with earnings growth. 2 is with increasing the price we pay for every dollar of that earnings. The price to earnings multiple, we call it in the business. So it's historically, before 2009 and the end of the housing bubble bursting, about half of all the S&P 500 returns were explained by corporate earnings. After that, only 17%. And lots of the increase had to do with the easy money that was out there. And we were paying higher and higher prices for every dollar of earnings. Now our central bank on the far right, as the growth of the central bank's balance sheet, as our treasury printed money and our central bank bought it just to shoot money out there, half of the total returns in the stock market are thanks to a Fed balance sheet, which keeps growing. And now they said, we're going to take away. That's what's nervous. My best thought for how this is going to be, it's our central bank, our Fed, attempting to walk a tightrope. Good luck to the Fed for that. We may have seen peak inflation. We're seeing some inflation figures fall off the boil. look at on the far left, look at the real inventories out there. That is after inflation. That is to say, inventories are starting to come back on the shelves. The supply constraints are starting to ease. That should help bring down the level of inflation. And here's the problem with the price we pay for every dollar of earnings. If I'm a student of history, which I must be in my business, and I go all the way back to 1920, I know that the higher inflation goes, the less we will pay for every dollar of earnings. You could see earnings continue to grow and the stock market fall as people say, I'm not paying as much for every dollar of earnings. That 2%, you see that 1% to 2% bar there, the third one from the left? That was the Goldilocks we've enjoyed for 40 years. And now inflation looks set to be higher, which is to say it's not going to be as easy. Oh gosh, with just a few minutes left, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. This is very important, I think, to remember as we consider the intermediate term, not the longer term, the next, say, 5 years, dealing with all the money printing. This looks at the biggest stimulus coming out of our government in the history of our country. The 5 top ones, and that shows you in terms of the percentage of our entire economy. The five of the 8 were in the year 2020 alone. In the name of COVID, unprecedented. In 2020, just in 2020 alone, and that's before that 1.9 trillion last stimulus that did come through, if you recall, the United States rise in debt per person was almost 13,000, far right, dwarfing the second one of 8,000. And look at China way at the bottom. That's the second largest country in the whole world. They're not building all this debt that we are, and someone's going to have to pay for that, because history shows that the more your debt rises, the more that the money that our economy raises must be used to pay interest on the debt. The debt continues to grow and grow, and I can catch up real quick here. She's giving me the, the eyebrow. Yeah. She's giving me. Now I'm going to suggest to you for the longer term. So for the short term, we shouldn't have to fear interest rates rising, not at the first. History says the economy's still growing. It's booming. Earnings are good. We're looking for 10% returns this year. Praise the Lord. Please take inflation off the boil just a little bit, if we could do that, we can be bullish for this year. But it is going to be a volatile year. There are lots of reasons to pull back, and there is a recession on our horizon, and stocks just don't like that. But the longer term is very bullish for the United States of America. As a good baby boomer, I am happy to, yield the stage to the millennial generation, the largest generation ever, and the one after that. And what this says is the prime skilled adult ages, when we as workers are at our very most productive, is the 30s and the 40s. When the median millennial is 31 today, that is so great. Productivity was falling for the last 15 years as boomers were retiring and there was not enough of skilled workforce to replace them. But there is now. The millennial generation and the Gen Zs behind them are two of the most well-educated, most tech-savvy that we have ever seen. And that is great news, because productivity can increase margins, keep inflation under control, and we're going to need that. So I am rooting for that. Oops. And just to show you here, this shows you at what our ages are. Gosh, that doesn't look as good in PDF. I apologize for that. But you can see the baby boomers, our peak year was 1999. The millennials won't peak out until 2038. I can skate in my retirement years with them at the helm. Life is going to be quite good, I think. And just finally, for you to chew on, by the turn of this next decade, there will be more millennial and Gen Z voters than the ages past them. It's just something for you to chew on. I wish to thank you all so very much for your kind attention. I think I'm right on schedule. for Jackie. And with 5 minutes to go before our meeting is adjourned, if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd be pleased to attempt to answer anything at all. Yes, please, sir. Thank you very much. The 10-year treasury yield. And by the way, for anyone who wants to figure out, try to glean what's happening with inflation looking out, the TIPS bonds, which are based on the inflation rate, or the so-called inflation expectations, the market now perceives that 5 years out, inflation will be just 2%. We don't want them to change their mind, and they haven't done that yet. So I'm an equity girl, and I say to my bond people, what's up with the 10-year government bond yield? If you looked historically, the 10-year government bond would have a rate on it 2% above inflation. Today, it's under 2% is the 10-year bond yield, and inflation is 7%. What's up with that? That is a rare. We want the inflation number to come down and meet him. For right now, that can make us feel better. We in the United States, we're like, savers are like, I'm only getting not even 2% to put my money in the government bond for 10 years. There are a lot of savers around the world who are putting their money into government bonds and getting a negative return. That is crazy. The US looked good by comparison, but we believe that 10-year bond yield will slowly being the key word, meander towards 2.25 by the end of this year. That's okay. It can meander towards 3% by the end of the next year. Still okay. And we've been there within the past several years. And as long as it meanders, that is the sign of a healthy economy. So I don't know. I pray on it. I probably shouldn't, but you never know. I mean, it could work. Yes, please, sir. So yes, the midterm elections. Yes, forgive me. It says it right here. It does right here. You probably put this here. Please. Even says please in all caps. What do we think about the, I apologize for that. What do you think about the midterm election years and what they might do to the market? You know, and historically the midterm election years are volatile years. The party in power generally loses House seats in particular, a lot of seats. And the party in power attempts to do whatever it can to avoid that, basically by spending as much money as it can. So the market just hates uncertainty, the uncertainty of it all, because usually it doesn't matter what's going on in Washington, D.C. unless there's big policy. And you can get big policy, which we have done, when you have one party running the whole show, which is what we have now. So the stock market today is, yeah, it's 10% off its highs. It's still looking really pretty good, is thinking that that the Democrats will lose the House. And even if the Democrats keep the Senate, you'll have a gridlock and nothing will get done because they're historically very close in terms of 50-50-ish together. Stock market tends to love gridlock. And so, but all the way leading up to that, it just historically, the market just hangs on with uncertainty, every little bit of news. And so you get sorry, I'm Italian, we use our hands. You get a volatile year. But historically, regardless of what happens afterwards, the market tends to go up and somewhat strongly. Volatility suggests, history suggests 10 to upwards of 30% stock market pullback leading up to a midterm election. So if things go on sale, and it behooves us to add, I can answer one more question or take one more comment if anyone has anything at all, please, sir.
Why does the $30 trillion that our debt is now, and what percentage of $300 billion out of taxes here and are advertised that next tax on 401ks, like to comment on.
You mean in terms of taxes? So the gentleman says in recognition of the fact that we're now at $30 trillion with our debt, and concerns being that the next move will be to tax our 401ks, to go after our savings. And some people do worry about that. Indeed, 30 trillion is breathtaking in its size. Right now, the debt to the size of our economy, the debt to GDP in our country is 110%, which is an all-time record high, puts us in 5th place in terms of the rankings of debt. And it's only promises to go higher. One reason why the stock market, which loves money printing and easy money, actually rallied when the stock market thought that Build Back Better and that extra amount of borrowing would not happen. So there aren't enough tax hikes to deal with this. And I don't believe that they will do that, because everyone in power, yeah, indeed, everyone in power realizes that you can't punish savings in that way. We really need to have people keep on saving. But what it does mean is that as we learned how to service this debt, that slower growth could occur, and we should be much more benign in our expectations for total returns. So thank you very, very much for your question, and thank you all. God bless you all. Thank you.
I know there are so many more great questions to ask, and Linda will be here to answer them for you following our meeting. Thank you so much for making the economic forecast so much fun. And I remember this from last year. You kind of left us feeling really hopeful during a pandemic, and you're leaving us feeling that way again. So thank you. You're even more fun in person. So as a thank you for being here, Linda has graciously signed the bookplate for the book Fly High, John Glenn, The Story of an American Hero by Kathleen Kroll, which will be given to the Alexander Good Elementary School. So next week's program will be great to follow this week's program, because it's Dr. G. Terry Madonna, the former pollster, professor, and current political commentator. Dr. Madonna will provide an analysis of the 2022 midterm election. His talk will cover national and Pennsylvania politics, with an update on Pennsylvania's important open U.S. Senate seat and governor elections. So you'll want to be here for that. In closing, our quote is by Madam C.J. Walker: "Don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them." Rotarians, I hope you have a great rest of your week. This meeting is adjourned.